Welcome to another edition of Green is Good. We're today at the Green Festival in San Francisco, and we've got with us a very special guest. We've got Paul Katzeff. He's the co-founder and CEO of Thanksgiving Coffee Company. Welcome to Green is Good, Paul.
Nice to be here.
Hey, Paul, we're two New Yorkers, and we were having a great conversation offline before we even started going today. And before we even get talking about all the great things you're doing at Thanksgiving Coffee Company, can we first hear about your journey? How did you get here? We talked a little bit about, you even said to me, look at us, we're here, two New Yorkers today sitting here. We've probably made 1 billion decisions along the way, most of them unconscious. Talk a little bit about the highlights of your life and your journey getting to this point today, and how you came to founding Thanksgiving Coffee Company, and how you got to being who you are today. In 5 minutes or less, right?
How about 2 hours or less? Look, it all goes back to the beginning. When you live long enough, you look back and see decades of decisions and a thread that you couldn't follow. We live our life in the present and the future. So we don't know what's coming, but when we can look back, we can see where things began. And for me, things began in my father's fruit and vegetable store in Queens, in Astoria, Queens, when I was 8 years old. My father had a fruit and vegetable store in a poor neighborhood, and he believed that the luxuries that we should share, that we all should share together, should be at least be the food. So he would buy the best food, the best produce, and sell it to poor people at honest prices, because he believed that's the way to be. So when I went to work there, I picked up on the idea of quality, of value, and authenticity. So that's where it began. And then that little seed grew through Cornell University School of Agriculture, where I studied palmology, which is a study of apple cultivation, and dairy farming. And I moved from that into Greenwich Village when I got out of college in the 60s, and there I hung out in coffee houses. And that harkened back to my Aunt Celia, who lived next door to me in the Bronx, who, when she brewed coffee in her Silex maker, not her percolator, but her different method, the aroma would waft over to my parents' apartment. But I wasn't drinking coffee, but it was there. So then when I got to Greenwich Village, and there were coffee houses, and I would sit at night at 2 a.m. writing lousy poetry in somebody else's place. When I eventually left New York 10 years later, the 60s was a good time to be in New York, in Greenwich Village, and in my 20s, I left for Colorado. And I have a master's degree in social work, and that was my profession, a community organizer in New York. I was the first director of Job Corps. And so when I got to Colorado, they didn't need me as a social worker and community organizer. And I said, okay, time to do a cafe. Now I know I've lived in cafes all night long, hundreds of nights. I didn't have a job. So in Aspen, Colorado, in 1970, I began to build a cafe. And a friend of mine walked in and said, what are you going to call this place? And I said, I'm going to call it Thanksgiving. And I don't know where that came from. It was like I became a messenger. It was just God-given.
In Aspen, Colorado?
In Aspen. And then 3 weeks later, when I was living in Harry Truman's railroad car, the one he whistle-stopped around the country in 1948, which was parked by the Roaring Fork River, and I was the caretaker of it. That was the place I was living. A vehicle drove up, a Bronco, with 3 guys, and they had heard that I had worked. They thought I had run Robert Kennedy's campaign for senator in New York, which was not the case, but I didn't tell them otherwise. And they asked me if I would run a campaign for them. And I said, who are you? And the guy said his name was Hunter Thompson. And I said I had no idea who Hunter Thompson was. Right. I was an East Coast guy.
Right.
He wrote for Rolling Stone, and he was, and I ran Hunter Thompson's campaign for sheriff while I was building this cafe. And the rest is, so that's the thread of my life. All random, but not random. Based on a seed that my father put into my head, not by telling me, but by showing me.
Wow. So, Thanksgiving Coffee Company was born in Aspen.
Correct.
Talk a little bit about the evolution from that day to where we are today. Give us a little history on Thanksgiving Coffee. How did you evolve the brand? How did it do in Aspen? And where are we today?
All right.
Roll through that a little bit, and then we're going to get into more specifics about the fair trade coffee industry.
Aspen Coffee House was an amazing experience, but it was in the early days of sharing. The concept of sharing was related also a little bit to the concept of taking. So my cafe, I didn't want to sit in front of the register all the time. That wasn't why I moved out of New York. So my cafe failed because a lot of money every day was lost to my employees. I was a young kid. I wasn't paying attention, had a great place, and I left Aspen 2 years later. Running, actually, from we lost the campaign for sheriff, and it was a cowboy town back then, and it was time to get out of town, and I left, running, basically. And I tried to sell all the coffee equipment and everything I had. In Aspen, in my cafe, I couldn't get good coffee, so I went back to New York and saw in an old Italian grocery store an old coffee roaster, and I had remembered it was there, and I went back to New York and got that roaster, and I was in a U-Haul truck, brought it back to Aspen and started roasting coffee, and that's how I started roasting coffee. It wasn't just a cafe, it was like the hippie culture at the time was stringing beads, working with leather, making candles, and roasting coffee seemed like a craft that was right for its moment for me.
Right.
When I left, I got on the road for 2 years. I had a broken heart. My girlfriend had left me, and I was lost and spent 2 years on the road and wound up in a hippie campsite on the Navarro River in Mendocino in my 16-foot Mack truck with my waterbed and my cook stove, and liked the Mendocino coast. It was beautiful, and I stopped. And I know that was the right move because within 6 months, I had purchased a piece of land. I had, on time, right? Didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
I had met a woman and fallen in love, and on the land that I purchased, and I started Thanksgiving Coffee again because I had a business, and that woman who became the co-founder of Thanksgiving Coffee, and we've been married for 43 years. So
everything came together.
Everything came together.
Wow.
Without trying. Just random, wonderful timing of everything. And I think if you're on your path, these are the kind of things that happen. It's when you stray from your path. But oftentimes we don't know what our path is.
It's so true. It's so true. So coffee has become so much of our lifestyle now in the United States and around the world, much more than when you and I were younger people.
Exactly.
And now with the whole sustainability revolution, environmental awareness, how did
that happen?
Yeah, explain that a little bit, and then the intersection of fair trade and sustainability with Thanksgiving Coffee and everything that you represent.
What happened to me? I'm going to answer this in a convoluted way, and I apologize for that.
No, it's okay.
But I have a master's degree in social work, and that was my profession all during the 60s. I worked in East Harlem with Puerto Rican street gangs. I worked for the Department of Labor, setting up job training programs. I was a community organizer on the Lower East Side for Mobilization for Youth. That was my world. When I left it, because if you can't do that 110%, or at least 100% you got to get out.
Right.
And for 10 years, I gave 110%. I gave my whole life to a concept of helping people. And I burnt out. I got tired.
Sure.
So I left. When coffee came into my life, I became the first social worker to become a coffee roaster in the history of the world.
Not convoluted at all. And then you put that together.
So, and any time two professions that are not the same come together, new ideas stem from that. And so I became a messenger for social justice in the coffee industry, not because I wanted to, but because it was me.
You know, and I just have to share with you, Paul, when I was reading all about you before we even had a chance to meet this morning, I saw that your motto is not just a cup, but a just cup. Can you, that's so important, that phrase. Can you please
tell you how it came about?
Yes.
Which I am happy to do, because it was literally, and if I tear up a bit, you'll have to forgive me.
It's okay.
I learned to cry as a man from Robert Kennedy when I was director of migrant education programs. I happened to bump into him in Louisiana in a field. He was bringing a group of senators to see poverty in Louisiana in the sugarcane fields, and I saw him stand in a field and cry for America. And so if I tear up, I'm comfortable doing it.
That's okay, I'm with you.
But not just a cup, but a just cup happened in 1985.
Okay.
The first motto of my company was in search of the perfect cup. And then another motto 10 years later was many beans are picked, few are chosen, because I wanted to focus on the craft. And then there was another motto that preceded not just a cup, but a just cup, which was roasters to wine country, because Mendocino is in the northern part of California, wine country. But in 1985, a serendipitous thing happened. You can say serendipitous. It was not it was probably the miracle that was supposed to happen. I got a phone call from a woman who had a nurse from Sacramento who had just come back from Nicaragua. Now, I'm a roaster for 15 years, and I had never seen a coffee tree in its own environment. I had never seen a coffee plantation or a coffee family farm after 15 years. And that was typical of 1985 and anything that was artisan coffee at the time. There was a fear by importers that if roasters started to deal direct, they would eliminate the middlemen. But so we were kept, the roasters were sort of kept away from jumping over that 10-foot wall.
Right.
I got this call, and this woman said, I have samples of Nicaraguan coffee I want to share with you. Can you roast them up for me and check them out yourself? And I said, sure. So she sent them to me from Sacramento. I roasted them, and they were just the coffee. I mean, they were spectacular. The flavor was outrageous. I said, I gotta go. 3 weeks later, I was on a plane to Nicaragua. I'm on the plane. I'm reading a book. I got dollar signs in my eyes. I mean, I'm thinking I am going to score here. This is it. I'm reading a book. I'm a businessman now.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not that guy that I just talked about.
Right.
And when we fly over Nicaraguan airspace, the pilot said, we are now flying over Nicaraguan airspace, and the plane, the young people in the plane started to sing a song. I had never been in a plane where people started to sing, a whole plane. They were singing Nicaragua Nicaraguita, which is the equivalent of God Bless America.
Their national anthem.
No, not their national anthem. Their song.
Okay.
Right. I mean, God Bless America is not a national anthem.
That's right. You're right.
So I looked around. I'm in the plane, 20 minutes to land. And I say to myself, oh my God, it's all young people and older people older, as old as I am now.
Right.
So I walked around the plane and said, what's going on? Why are you going to Nicaragua? Why are you going to Nicaragua? They were going to help the revolution. They were going to work in hospitals. They were going to work as coffee brigade people to pick coffee so the Contras wouldn't fire at the Nicaraguans because they were Americans. They were going to build houses. I said, oh my God, I'm on the right of these people. These are my people.
This is everything you've been living for.
This is everything. What happened to me? Right?
Right.
I felt it.
Right.
And I got scared.
Right.
Because I had never been in a revolutionary country before.
Right.
Aside from my own, which was so I'm walking down the stairs of the plane onto the tarmac.
Right.
And a woman comes up to me, grabs me by the shoulder, She was absolutely exquisite. She had black hair that was iridescent, like she had almond-shaped eyes. She was wearing combat boots, khakis. She had a red bandana and an AK-47 over her shoulder, and she said, "Mr. Katzeff, come with me." I freaked out. I said, "They're all going over there. I got to get my luggage." And she said, "Come with me." And she led me to a room where there were 3 pictures on the walls, about a 20 by 20 room. Nobody was in it. There were 3 pictures on the wall. Karl Marx, Che Guevara, and some other person who wound up being Daniel Ortega, who was the president of the country, who I didn't know. And she leaves me there. I'm alone in that room. And my heart is pounding. And then my host, Daniel Nunez, who is the president of the Farm Workers Union, UNAG, Union of Farmers and Ranchers, comes into the room with a translator, comes over to me, we shake hands, it's the first time we're meeting, and he says to me, puts his arm around me, he says, "Paul, here in Nicaragua, we know you're a humble man, but we need you to be big." What did that mean? My heart was still pounding. I was like alone in a revolutionary country, and he leads me to a door. And we open the door, we're going to walk through it, and in front of that door is a podium with about 25 microphones taped together and a room full of media people. And it was my first press conference as the president of the Specialty Coffee Association of America, which I was at the time.
But this was unexpected.
And not only that, I was still this kid from the Bronx.
Right.
Right. So that began a romance with the Sandinistas. They took me around the country. They proselytized their point of view. They indoctrinated me, and I became a Sandinista in my heart. And on the way home, in the airplane, I was thinking, 10 days later, having toured the country having met with 6 of the 9 ruling commandantes of the revolution, I changed the name on the plane. I changed our motto from "In Search of the Perfect Cup" to "Not Just a Cup, but a Just Cup." And that changed my life and the lives of millions of people around the world, because that was the beginning of social justice in the coffee industry.
That's an amazing story. It amazes
me.
And that's your motto today.
Not just a cup, but a just cup.
And that still is the motto today.
And it leads and directs our lives, the lives of my staff, the people who sell coffee to me, the co-ops that I work with. And it keeps us on point.
Where is all your coffee sourced from today, as where we sit today in 2014? Where is your coffee? I work in 6 or 7 countries. Okay.
My coffee comes in Central America, and 25% of the 1,000,000 pounds of coffee that we roast a year. And 1,000,000 pounds of coffee is a silo about 2 foot wide and 18,000 feet high. That's how much coffee goes through our roasting machine. 25% of that coffee comes from Nicaragua.
Got it.
The rest in Central America, Guatemala is another really important country. I work in Rwanda and in Uganda and Ethiopia. I only buy from cooperatives. I only buy from, and a cooperative is a democratic, so it promotes democracy. One farm, one vote. So that's what fair trade is about. It's not just about a minimum that the farmer is going to get in terms of money.
Right.
It's about promoting democracy, because most of these countries, the people have been subjugated by dictators. So how do you learn about democracy? From the bottom up, not from the top down.
You know, Paul, one of the great things is not only having amazing guests like you on the show that share these journeys and stories, and then the brands that they've created, but I want to make sure our listeners today understand a couple of things about you and your brand. Where can they today buy your brand? If they want to enjoy the quality that you've put forth, but also really your message of social justice resonates with them and they want to support that, and continue that to grow. Where can they find this commercially? Is this only online, or is this in stores around the United States and around the world?
It's online. It's around the world.
That's wonderful.
But and it's Thanksgiving Coffee. www.thanksgivingcoffee.com is our website.
Right.
And those stories are the stories that we're talking about are there. And our web store is available to everybody worldwide. Probably 75% of our coffee is sold in Northern California.
75%.
I would say 75% is sold in California. The rest is sold around the country.
Okay. I came out of the dot-com world. You and I have lived through the dot-com revolution, which is still, of course, booming in so many ways. And when I walked up and met you this morning, you showed me something that blew me away, something I've never seen before. It was shocking that it hadn't been invented, but you're a visionary that's constantly years ahead of the curve. I want to show our listeners and our viewers out there, this is your new app. It's called the Smart Coffee app.
It's called Smart Coffee.
And Smart Coffee, and it's, again, I'm showing our viewers out there, and our listeners can go to the App Store and download Smart Coffee. Explain to our listeners and our viewers what you just showed me.
All right.
We're coming to the last couple of minutes of the show, but it was so exciting and interesting, and it's so important. I want you to finish up with this great piece of technology.
Look, you go into a supermarket and you take a look at the bins, the bulk bins of coffee, and all the various brands of coffee. And if you're a coffee lover or a coffee consumer, you have no idea what to do.
I'm utterly confused at this point.
Right.
When I'm there.
So I decided that I realized that roasters communicate well with themselves, but as an industry, we haven't taught our customers, our coffee lovers, how to think and drink and even talk like a coffee professional. So and in your lifetime, you're gonna drink. If you drink 2 cups a day for 50 years, it's 3,000 gallons.
Wow.
That's a big lifetime journey. If you're going to go on a lifetime journey, you might as well know what that journey is all about and how to select coffee that really appeals to your own personal taste buds. My taste buds are different than yours. Women's taste buds are more intense than men's. They have more taste buds. So how do we relate the 50 to 75 different possibilities that everybody's faced with when they go to buy coffee? Well, I discovered over the years that 80% of the flavor of coffee is determined by roast color. Just like you're making toast in the morning. You can make light toast, medium toast, dark toast. People have different preferences. So I created an app that has a flavor profile test that will enable a person to actually make some choices and then enable me to assess their taste buds and their preferences and recommend what they should do, how they can make their own blends right there in the store with the different roast colors.
And it could also show them where the coffee's from, how it's sourced, everything, right? There's a whole history behind everything.
And I have there's 200 photographs in there of pictures that I've taken around the world of coffee and how it's grown and the people, and basically giving people an education on coffee. And coffee now is expensive. It's $15 a pound for really good coffee. If you make a mistake, you've lost $15.
That's right.
Why make the mistake over and over again? Why have it be a rant? Why not just go and say, I know what I want. I know the direction. The app will not get you your perfect cup the first time, but it will lead you on a journey that you'll know you're on the path to getting your perfect cup.
Well, perfect, Paul. We're going to have you back on Green is Good. We're so thankful for you coming on today. Your story and your journey and your brand is something why we started the show. This is exactly why we started the show, to share these stories with our listeners, now with our viewers. We're so thankful for your time. We're so thankful for your brand. And we're so thankful just to hear how you've brought social justice to the coffee and created a sustainable brand that lives on today, and all the way from the 60s to now. It's just incredible that and it's continuing to grow. You're taking technology and expanding it even further, and we're just grateful.
That's my gift to coffee lovers.
Well, you're our gift to the coffee world. I wish all of our listeners out there and our viewers out there can support Paul and his great brand. It's ThanksgivingCoffee.com. It's ThanksgivingCoffee.com. This is just great. The Thanksgiving Coffee Company, not just a cup, but a just cup. And to learn more about all the great tastes out there, that if you're interested in matching your taste and getting the right cup, the Smart Coffee app. I looked at it this morning. I'm downloading it today. This is something else, a true revolution in a cup. Thank you, Paul Katzeff. You are truly living proof that green is good.
Thank you for having me.